I said, oh, my body's feeling inflamed. Like this relationship is not healthy. And I refuse to develop any type of illness because I hold on to this, because I participate in self-silence, because you are at a different rank than I am. So, in order for my body not to keep the score, it was being upfront and saying, hey, this is what you did. It was wrong. And however they respond is however they responded, whether or not they took accountability, which they didn't, right? They justified the violence because, like you said, it's upheld and is rewarded in some instances, in too many instances, to be quite frank. So if you are someone who has ingested the violence and now you're aware of it, ask yourself, like, how can I navigate differently so I release this violence that's living in my body?
This is the Lirae Journey podcast on the McKissick Health Podcast Network. I'm Dr. Sherella Cupid, your host.
The Lirae Journey podcast is a space for Black women to choose themselves. Welcome back, sisters, sponsors, and supporters of the Lirae Journey podcast. For the fourth season, the theme is transitions. We'll continue the sister circle conversations with Black women from different stages of life with various personal, community, and professional roles. The intention of this season is to continue and start conversations on the meanings, experiences, and practices around transitions, such as becoming a mom, shifting careers, and establishing a new lifestyle. Thank you for being a part of the Lirae Journey community, because Lirae means love is real and eternal. So sis, let's practice love. So today's episode is the last episode of season 4. Woo woo! And I'm excited for this conversation because I wanted to reflect on my postdoctoral journey since we had conversations with other doctoral candidates, doctoral students, PhD holders, MDs. We had an array of sisters in regards to the educational journey. And I wanted to take the opportunity to discuss my postdoctoral journey. And one person who has known me before my postdoctoral journey is Sierra McKissick. So I'm super excited for Sierra to be in conversation with me again as we wrap up this season, discuss my journey as a postdoctoral researcher. So Sierra McKissick, again, is the wonderful, the expertise in regards to the media and communication space. She is one of my dear thought partners. I'm always grateful to be in community with her. And she's also the founder and the CEO of the McKissick Health Network podcast. So if you have not listened to the other podcasts in this network, be sure to add it to your podcast list, subscribe wherever you are listening, and share it with a friend or two. So Sierra, as I often begin the conversation, if you want to share any more about yourself, please do so.
Yes, you hit the nail on the head with some beautiful words. I'm touched. It's always crazy when we think about like how long we've known each other. And I'm like, wow, that was before the doctoral program. So I'm happy to be here, happy to be in conversation with you again. The recap last time was so awesome. So I know today is going to be just as great because you had another incredible season speaking to Black women from all different areas of life and even the nation. I think you had some people pretty scattered out. So I'm excited to dig into it and sort of revisit what we learned this season because we learned a lot. Still
We did.
processing some of it, yeah.
We definitely did learn a lot, and it helped me to be mindful to reflect on my own journeys in regards to transitions. So that's why I wanted to take the time also to share my journey when we think about the postdoctoral journey, since we had two during the season, and Gary and Dahlia discussed their journeys as doctoral students. I wanted to be mindful to come into the space to offer what that experience was like for me as a postdoctoral researcher, just in case anyone is out there that's also a postdoctoral researcher, someone who's considering doing a postdoc, just to hear someone's journey to me is always helpful when we think about how do we hold space and share our journeys to help others. Yeah. So, in order to enter into this space of reflection, what I did was a couple of journal entries, reflecting on that time. I'm someone who definitely will promote journaling as a tool of reflection, a tool of memory engagement, right? Like all of the goods that come with taking a pause. Because I think oftentimes we're just go, go, go in the US society. So to take a pause with yourself, to really practice that self-awareness, which I think with everything that's going on, it can be hard to distinguish between like your thoughts and the thoughts that we are flooded with when we think about like doom scrolling and all of the things. So for me, in order to enter into the space, I did a couple of journal reflections, which ultimately led into a blog entry. So for those that are on Medium, even if you're not on Medium, you have access to my blogs on Medium, so you can find me on medium.com at Lirae Journey. I highly recommend that you read the blog entry as an entry point into this episode or as an exit point into this episode, however you prefer to engage with the medium. But for me, the postdoctoral journey allowed me the space to continue my research. So I am a researcher who looks at sister circles in multiple areas, education, media, the workplace. And that experience allowed me to look at the experience of Black women health professionals during the pandemic. I also experienced the postdoctoral journey during the pandemic, right? And for me, I think it's important for us to take moments to reflect on how the pandemic showed up for us and what lessons we can take away from it. And what I would say in regards to the postdoctoral journey and thinking about the lessons from the pandemic is to be mindful about how you water your communities. So I moved cross country or mid country for the postdoc, and I did not necessarily consider what community would look like outside of the workplace. So I would say if you are someone who is considering a major move for your professional career, ask yourself, like, what does community look like outside of the workplace? Like, is there space for you? Are there organizations? Are there clubs? Are there gyms? Like, whatever you do that completes your identity, is there space for that? I was fortunate enough to build community, to form a new sister circle throughout that postdoc, which really helped to carry me through that journey since it wasn't as fulfilling as I thought it would have been. So I'm grateful that I was able to receive love in unexpected places. So that's also something that I would uplift that if you're someone, again, who is moving for a professional um, opportunity to be mindful, to be open about how can love show up and where can it show up in places that you didn't expect. One of my dear sister friends from that journey said that she prayed for friendship. Like she prayed for a sisterhood that she did not have before, which to me, I was just like, oh wow, I never consider to pray for a sisterhood. I think that perhaps because I was fortunate enough to have a sister circle before I left, that also helped to carry me through that journey. I didn't think to pray for that social aspect, right? So I would say if you are making a major life change by choice, right? Because then you have the time and you are someone of faith, whatever faith you practice, pray for the whole. Like, what does the whole look like for you? Would be my question. And pray for that. So that way you're mindful about, oh, when it shows up, like, oh, I have arrived in my prayer. Because I think oftentimes we can navigate life without realizing that, oh, I'm in the prayer that I prayed for. Right. So I would say that's something else I'm now mindful of, like when I'm going through major life changes, to pray for the whole is something that I took away from that experience. I see you nodding your head, Sierra.
Yeah, because I think one of the weaknesses of higher ed, and as somebody who loves talking about wellness within higher education, is that it's not thinking of the whole. It rarely considers the whole. And there are all these departments, there's all these offices that are on campus for students, whether you're an undergraduate or graduate student, to sort of access resources to cater to and serve the whole, but even sometimes they're deficient. We have the Office of Student Care and Support, and still it's deficient in actually providing care. Sometimes they look at food insecurity or they look at housing crisis, but then they don't look at racial trauma on campus, right? And so our whole is always limited by our blind spots. And if you can take a second and think about your blind spots before you enter into a new environment, you'll find ways to be resourceful once you get there, right? And that's always a good thing. And it's not just that environment in particular, it's any environment you go into. When you get a job, right? You want to look at the company culture. You want to look at if it's near somewhere you can eat. If you don't have a car, right, and you have to walk to work, you need places to eat by. And some people will be like, well, that's not what you look at when you pick a job. It is if you're hungry. Okay.
Mhm.
Like you need to be able to consider all of those things. So it's very important that I never thought about the praying for friendship in those spaces. And I think it's because we also like make ourselves practical as we enter into those spaces and we go, I even said this in my MDiv program. I was like, I'm not here to make friends. I'm not trying to redo undergrad. I've done it. I'm good. And I was like in the divinity school, okay? And you're like, I don't need to make friends. But also like you do get to witness where people enter into that conversation about friendship. And sometimes it's not healthy. And sometimes people are trying to relive past experiences and sort of right whatever they feel was wrong. So there's a bit of competitiveness or there's relational violence that happens and people become a victim of that. So it is necessary that we protect ourselves in new spaces, but it's also important that we look out for ourselves in caring ways as well. And we search for resources and we search for ways to sort of ground ourselves in the community that we've chosen to be a part of.
That's good. I think there are a couple of things that came to mind as I'm thinking back. I would also say when you think about what you have access to, if you are living with a health condition that you may need an emergency care for, that's something to be mindful of because I could not have made that move if I didn't have access to certain specialists, right? So, like you said, like what does the whole look like for you? And wellness in regards to access to adequate healthcare is one of it. Right. So I would say that's also something to be mindful of. Like when I was moving, my doctor was like, oh, let me find you the doctors in that area just in case just in case you need an emergency visit, you have it, save it in your phone. So I would also say when we think about relocation, if you have a health condition, to be mindful of like who are the doctors? Do I have access to them? Because as much as we want to be well and practice wellness, some things are out of our control. So, as much security that you can offer yourself in that transition, that's also something that I would uplift. Yes.
Yeah. And I love that because it also reminds you to take care of all aspects of your health. Like if you're somebody who values the outdoors, right? Then maybe you don't want to live downtown in an urban community. If you're somebody who needs access to parks, or you need water available to you on the weekend. Like, you need to be careful about what places you choose because that's not always available. But definitely health concerns, even if you're working on a fitness journey, right? And you need a place that also allows students to use the gym, right? That could be something that's important. And again, people might think, well, you shouldn't decide what institution you go to based on these things. And a good question is, why not? Why
Mm.
not? If the research faculty are so important, why aren't the resources that they provide for the students who enroll there? You're literally like paying rent to live here. You're paying for the education. You're also paying for the resources that the institution provides. Make sure they provide good resources.
Hmm. No,
You
yeah.
wouldn't move into an apartment that's supposed to have running water and bathrooms, like that function correctly, and be like, oh well, it's okay. The tub only works sometimes. No, the shower better work all the time. The tub better be stable, okay? And that's important when you look for a house. Make it important when you look at anything.
Yeah. No, that's good. Yeah, I totally agree with that. And also, I experienced a hurricane probably like it was maybe within the first 2 weeks of the start of the semester. So I would also say, what insurances do you have? Like renter's insurance, homeowner's insurance, personal injury insurance, like all of the things, and also who or where can you go to in a state of emergency? Do you have access to leave? Like, do you have emergency funds? Right. I said, ooh, I'm okay with snowstorms, but hurricanes, I'm just like, ooh,
They
I
can
don't
keep
have
the
no.
water. You can keep all the water. I don't need water. I don't need air. None of that. None of that. Keep the fire, honey. Golly. Okay. One way to get me gone. Start bringing some natural disasters my way, and I'm out of there. I don't need to be around. But it is. It's a really good point. It's a really good point, and I grieve for young adults because these are the things that you don't get taught directly. You
Mhm.
learn by trial and error. You learn by fire. I was talking to somebody recently, and they were like, "I don't want you to have to jump in there and drink from the water hose." Most of adulthood is drinking from the water hose. Like, you get what you get and you don't throw a fit. And that continues until we push back on that
Mm.
philosophy, right? And so one of my reasons for starting this podcast network and starting McKissick Health and Wellness overall was so that young adults had the resources available to them. And maybe you don't need it today, but you can download that episode and come back next week and listen to it. You can fix your credit score by reading this article, or you can start having a healthier diet by getting these recipes, things that nobody's teaching you directly because they're pushing you into the workforce or they're pushing you into higher education. And those spaces aren't equipped to teach you these things. You can definitely get a job, set up your 401k, get everything you're supposed to get, right? Once you start a job and then not know how to balance your budget and end up in a terrible place financially. So yeah, these are the kind of conversations I've always wanted to have so that people don't feel like they're walking ignorantly into all of these situations. You can have a level of confidence where you're aware, like, there are some things that I cannot prepare for, but I can also be knowledgeable about a lot of things as I
Mhm.
enter into this stage.
Mhm. No, that's good. I totally agree with that. I feel as though a lot of it is learning while going with others. So I'm also grateful that I'm in communities where people aren't afraid to be vulnerable because I'm just like, don't have me out here looking silly. Like, if you know, let me know so that way I can move accordingly. And I had a conversation with a sis when she was, considering doing a postdoc, and I said, I would advise you to move with a plan. Like, what is like when you leave this space, what do you hope to have accomplished? And within that, who do you desire to work with to help you to accomplish that? And if you aren't able to work with those persons, what's your backup plan? because I know when you recommend someone to me or when I recommend someone to you, I tell you the capacity in which I work with them. So just so you know, like, now, sis, I may not have worked with them in that degree, so I can't speak to that nature, right? So that way I'm giving you an honest introduction in regards to our relationship, because I don't want you to come back like, okay, sis, you hooked me up with that person and they were horrible to work with. Like I had to carry the load, etc. So I think in offering that advice is so that she went in more prepared with a game plan. Because I had a conversation with one of the deans that said, oh, when she exit here, make sure that you have published this amount of articles if you want to enter into the research space, right? And I never had someone explicitly tell me, like, oh, these are now the market expectations in order to be competitive. So for me, it's thinking, okay, like what are the advice, tips, facts that I've learned that I can pass forward to someone so that way their journey can be hopefully more easeful than my journey is also how I think about how do we practice that relationship, community engagement that you talked about earlier.
You bring up a really good point. I think higher education forgets that the educators are also supposed to be like ambassadors, right? They're supposed to help people make connections. And so when you talk about giving me the inside scoop of how many articles I need to publish or how I even access a journal to publish in a journal, like this is information that people have learned over years of their professional career. You don't know that going into graduate school. You don't know that coming out of graduate school. There are plenty of people who have graduate degrees and have never published simply because somebody didn't explain to them that they could. And it's sad because that was the whole point of higher education, right? But we forget along the way that we are there to help the people we're serving. It's not just I'm here to do my job and do my research and get out or to teach. I'm here to serve the community, and ask, what do we need? What don't we know? And I think the more we can ask that question when we're engaging with students or we're engaging with the institution as a whole, like what don't we know and what aren't we sharing with other people so that they can do some of this stuff? Like all the papers you write in grad school, all the papers you write in undergraduate school, something is said in there, right? That might be valuable enough to publish. You just need some help figuring out how to do that. And that would be nicer. It would be nice if we could do that for people.
Yeah. I think that is yes, that's definitely something that I left away with. I was able to be a faculty mentor on two labs, and it was their first time, like, starting their journey, and they were mindful to create those research labs so that way they can work with students to get those hands-on experiential learning, those conference presentations, those journal articles, so that way if that's the route that they want to take, then they've already experienced it. It's not like a shock of when they leave, they just have a degree and nothing else to back up that degree. So I do definitely wholeheartedly support what you said in regards to being ambassadors. What I will also say is if you have experienced any type of training, to be mindful to reflect on the guides that you were given or the mentors that you were given, whether or not they were mentors or advisors on paper, and how did they mentor you? Because also during the postdoc, I had a conversation with a psychologist and also a researcher, and he asked me to write like a review, like a one pager reviewing like my journey and things like that. And he said, oof, I think you experienced trauma. I said, me? It's like, I see someone who was alone. I said, that's not how I read
Sir, get out of my journal. Bye.
it.
Wait, what? What? Yes. Mm-hmm.
And he said, "Did you ever consider taking a break?" I said, "A break?" And like it all seemed like really foreign to me, right? Like when you get a like I don't know if anyone ever, when you get a diagnosis, you're like, "Huh? Say it again?" Like you're telling me a lot right now. Like, it's like you're in a state of shock. And I felt as though I was in a state of shock because I thought I was doing all right, right? But the psychologist said, "No, I think you've experienced trauma." And then in my mind, I said, "But what happens when you are living through trauma?" was my question, right? I think oftentimes we can't think about talking about trauma in the past tense, but what happens when you feel as though you are living through a traumatic experience? Like, how do you navigate that? Was a question that I had that I didn't answer, but that's also a question that I walked away with from that conversation.
You make a great point. I'm going to start with the living through trauma, and then I'm going to hope that I remember my other comment so I can go back to it because I feel it's slipping away already. But in regard to this living in trauma, it is one of the greatest weaknesses of community because community has to acknowledge that one is living through a trauma and they have to acknowledge their role in designing that trauma and then their compliance and allowing it to continue, right? And so I think of higher education as the worst narcissist you could ever invoke on an 18-year-old, right? Because we intentionally tell our 18-year-olds to go into this environment and do what they say do and come away with something valuable that helps them sustain themselves for the rest of their life. Meanwhile, the place where you sent them tells them, no, I'm hurting you, but that's how it's supposed to be. That's how this works, right? And so then we all normalize the trauma. And the community is designed to support and protect all the ways that they enact violence against people, right? The institution protects itself at all cost. And so it's very difficult to address when you experience living through a trauma in present time at an institution, but also anybody who reflects on the experience of that trauma also becomes a villain in a lot of ways because we need more people to come and you're ruining it, right? Like you're exposing us. And now how will we get them here? Because it's like that. It's like that. You can't promise, oh, you'll have a great 4 years or however long your program might be, because that's not true. And you might have great memories. I think any experience, you can sort of mine the joy out of it, but that doesn't subtract the violence. And I think we can hold the tension of the two. We can say that, yes, higher education taught me how to think in an incredible way that I would have never been able to access had I stayed in my community. At the same time, every health condition I have present day is a result of that experience, right? And even the way you challenge the way you think is a result of that experience and the violence that occurred in that space. And we can say good came, but bad happened too. And that's the thing a lot of people are uncomfortable with because we make it your responsibility to handle whatever pain you're experiencing in present time. And it's not. It's not your responsibility. It's everybody's responsibility. One of the best things that came out of my graduate experience, because I didn't do PhD, I stopped. I looked up and I was pushing 28 and I said, I want to go enjoy my 20s. And so I got the hell out of there. But just in time to realize everything it had done to me for the past 10 years, like you were really going through it here. And so as I was sort of unpacking, one of my past professors said that shouldn't have happened to you. And it was not okay. And hearing that is like the experience you're talking about where the person said, I think you experienced trauma. It's like, oh, there was somebody here who thought it wasn't okay. Like it wasn't normalized by everybody. Everybody wasn't subscribing to the same methodology in instructing students and in sort of attacking them. to make them better, right? This is the worst hazing process you could ever go through, right? Because it completely destroys every bit of who you are. And you have to sort of recreate or reconstruct a new idea of self. And a lot of people struggle with that on the tail end of that experience. So yeah, it is it's a wild life experience. That's what it equates to. It's like there are lions, tigers, and bears. Jasmine Sullivan was right. Okay. But I'm scared. I am scared. And you should be scared. Because it shouldn't be there. And if there is one thing I wish you could just snap your fingers and do, it's fix the people, because it's us. We create that environment. It's not a third party experience that happens. It's literally people participating and doing violence and harm to other people.
No, yes, I'm gonna think on that before I share the next point. But you said you had another point that you hope we didn't forget.
And
And
I
this
probably
is
forgot. What was the first part of what you said?
let me see, the first part was acknowledging the trauma, the shock of someone saying, "Oh, I think you've experienced trauma," and the
Yeah.
question of what does it mean to live through trauma?
Yeah. I think I might have cracked that first part. I wish I had wrote whatever my thought was down faster in my brain. Because it was so good back to back. And I caught that last part, because that is it's if you fix the community, if you fix the people, if you even fix the administrators, right, and the faculty that invoke some of this harm, and it's just a reflection process, right? Everybody has to stop and reflect. Higher ed, when we were going through, was comprised of people who like got their degrees in the 70s and 80s, right? It was a whole nother world. This is like before DEI, before we really can admit that there's harm being done in our immediate communities, in our households, okay? We're still addressing what daddy did to us and how mama didn't love us. And we jumped on the bandwagon of becoming a scholar so that we could feel important. Like, there are a lot of issues that you have to unpack when you're talking about some of the older generations. And then even their philosophy on what it means to mentor is completely different from what we see today. We see it as, let's get coffee. They saw it as, I'm going to take your paper and write red streaks all through it, and that's me doing it because I care. It's the same thing that we saw in households. People just live it out in a different way.
No, that's good. I think the generational conversations is definitely something that needs to be had. And I don't know the spaces in which we can have those intergenerational conversations. I would say, like, right after my postdoc, I tried to have one of those conversations, and relationship violence did occur, right? So it's like, okay, what happens when we both may think that we're right because of our generational differences? Um, yeah, like what happens in those spaces when you want the community to heal, but you don't think the other person necessarily has that objective? And the reason why I say that is because this person said, like, oh, like, basically I did something that was unethical because I'm a leader, and that's what leaders do, which is definitely different than how I think and how I operate, right? So I would say that's a needed, necessary space, but who wants to be in that space?
Tag me in, because I will read. You know what? I love the old folks. I call them elders, and I call them friends, and I call them really funny people. But I'm going to tell y'all about yourself. And you can tell me about myself. I have no problem calling it out, and being specific about it, because I think sometimes it's difficult to learn when we speak abstractly, right? So if we get really practical and really specific about what happens, then we might just survive it. We might just heal from it. And no lie, Sherella, it took me, I will say, the entirety of the 7 years I haven't been in grad school in order to finally feel like I'm healing, not healed, but healing from some of the intellectual violence that occurred. And in one of the chapters in the book you edited, I wrote about being in like second grade and experiencing intellectual trauma in math class. And to this day, I do not fool with math. If you ask me some math, I'm going to ask Alexa, okay? I'm just not here for it. And because it hits you as a part of who you are, right? It attacks your human value when you experience intellectual violence. And so experience in grad school or undergrad, wherever you experience it, where people are like, no, I can't. That's violence. If you simply do something harmful because you believe you can, that's violence. That is violence against the person who's saying, I'm hurting. And it's scary that we've enabled people to have that much power over other human beings who are adults. I think about when people argue, you can't do physical harm to any other adult, but we do it to kids, right? And it's a fine line that we walk, right? A fine line where we walk when we talk about discipline and what that should look like for children. But we rarely talk about the verbal violence that we invoke on all age groups, right? And I think it's a human problem. We really need to examine how we are as humans to one another. And if we could ever get that right, like that wouldn't be a problem. You wouldn't have somebody say, I can because of my position. You want to talk about patriarchy? That's something that stems from patriarchy, where I can because I'm bigger, I'm smarter, I'm stronger, I'm a man. Like, no, that's not what we're doing here. So to some extent, I'm like, give them a hug when they do that. And the other extent, I'm like, we finna go in this corner and we're gonna come to Jesus and I'm gonna tell you about this and you gonna go fix it. How about that?
This episode of the Lirae Journey podcast is sponsored by Left on Red. Left on Red, founded by Dr. Latasha Ely Kelly, is a specialty bookstore and cultural space rooted in the mission to amplify representation, cultivate perspective, and empower community, with a focus on titles by Black authors and works of African American interests. The curated collection spans a range of genres and lived experiences, alongside thoughtfully selected stationery, keepsakes, and collectibles that reflect Black culture. Left on Red also hosts events, workshops, and programs that connect literature to everyday life, learning, and well-being. As the home of the Millennial Black Professor and TMBP Media, Left on Red expands beyond the page through podcasting, storytelling, and creative media initiatives that honor underrepresented narratives and foster meaningful dialogue. This space exists to serve, support, and shift, offering both inspiration and intention for anyone seeking reflection, knowledge, and community. You can support Left on Red by visiting leftonredbooks.com. Again, that's leftonredbooks.com, or visiting the bookstore in Wichita, Kansas. Again, thank you, Left on Red, for sponsoring the Lirae Journey podcast.
Because it is. And I think about also saying, like, I was 22, I think, when I started grad school. And I was in there with a whole bunch of 40-year-olds. Some of them were my age, but most of them were a couple years older or much older. And it's like at 22, you're being charged alongside people who have a wealth of life experience, right? Stop doing it to people. Let everybody enter into the conversation at their point of entry. And if you're a faculty member, if you're an instructor, an educator who cannot separate the two, you need to go sit in your office and drink your coffee and read a book, okay? You need to stop teaching, because teaching should always be person-centered. It should always be student-centered, and each student should be allowed to be who they are and bring that into conversation. I love Dr. Emily Towns for one reason alone. When I took her class, first off, I did not enjoy taking many Black women's classes. And that was a problem for me because I am a Black woman through and through, and I love me some Black women, and some of them look like my mama and my grandma and a couple of my aunts. And then I was going home having traumatic experiences with women with short hair, because the body is keeping score. It's really remembering these experiences. But I appreciate um, Dr. Towns, because in her class, she allowed me to show up as me. And she didn't criticize me for not using whatever terminology other people were using. She didn't criticize me because I used Disney movies, right, in my exploration, or that I used slang, to communicate certain perspectives. And it was important because you asked me to write as if I'm impacting my community. And this is what my community speaks like. This is what my community understands. So I'm not going to use no white man who died in the 40s, okay, to discuss what my community needs to understand, because they're not going to understand that. And I think validating human value is so important, and it's the greatest weakness of higher ed.
You said a lot.
It's like that soapbox. This is a soapbox for me. I love it. Talk about
No,
wellness.
that's good. I definitely think as an educator, I'm often apologizing for experiences that students have in regards to their personhood. Like, oh, like, I'm so sorry that that teacher said that to you. That's not a reflection about your value, but we carry those stories, like you said, like the body keeps the score, right? And I think in reflecting on the postdoc and asking myself, like, what do I need to release in regards to the body keeping the score? Right. And I think that in that instance, I even talked to a sis who's who's also in the field of like counseling and social work. I was like, oh, I think that person was trying to bully me. And we like went through the attributes of like what makes an experience, a bullying experience. It's like, oh, differentiation of power. Okay, like check. Like she went through like the checklist and she was like, yes, sis, unfortunately, I think that's what you've experienced, right? So like what happens when you have experienced maybe covert toxicity versus overt? Because I think you brought up a good point, right? It's easier for us to see violence when it's physical. But what happens when it's behind your back, when it's verbal violence? Like, how do you approach that? Because I think a lot of the emotional work and the emotional healing, it can feel as though it takes a deeper investment, especially if you have to unearth it. Like if someone hits you, oh, you can feel that hit. Like it's an instant, like, whew, I didn't feel that attack, right? But what happens when they use their position of power in order to try to undermine your work and your ethics, right? I think that's something definitely to ask yourself if you have experienced that type of trauma, unfortunately. And I'm reminded of something someone told me. Basically, sometimes we repeat how we were trained, how we were mentored, how we were advised, right? So sometimes we may not even realize that we're replicating systems that are unhealthy because that's all we know. And when someone confronts you about it, it's like, oh no, I'm doing it right because it's being upheld. Like no one is challenging this, right? And I think that's something that's difficult to unearth. I would also say you saying you having to unpack the trauma, ask yourself if you are in this space with this person or this person, how is your body responding? Because for me, when knowing I had to address the situation, the bullying situation, I said, oh, my body's feeling inflamed. Like this relationship is not healthy. And I refuse to develop any type of illness because I hold on to this, because I participate in self-silence, because you are at a different rank than I am. So in order for my body not to keep the score, it was being upfront and saying, hey, this is what you did. It was wrong. And however they respond is however they responded, whether or not they took accountability, which they didn't, right? They justified the violence because, like you said, it's upheld and is rewarded in some instances, in too many instances, to be quite frank. So if you are someone who has ingested the violence and now you're aware of it, ask yourself, like, how can I navigate differently so I release this violence that's living in my body? Because I don't want anyone to, again, like they say, a lot of Black women, lot of Latina women, we have immune diseases and illnesses because we self-silence, right? So it's not just like, oh, like what we're eating, it's, oh, like what relationship energies are we ingesting in these spaces and how is it being manifested in our bodies? And I hope that you're able to leave the spaces or navigate it differently. I was grateful that I explicitly ended that relationship because if I can't live in this space, that means I'm dying while I'm still living, and I'm not here for that. So, yeah.
I need you to go take a note. Ingested violence, dying in spaces, and you go write that out for us because we need that. And this is gonna sound twisted, but ingested violence is such a beautiful imagery for what happens. And I say it's beautiful because sometimes we just go, it happened to me. But in order to ingest something, I had a weakness, right? Like I had a moment of vulnerability where it had to enter into me. And I think we see the resistance from people when we admit and confront them about violence because they can't admit that they've ingested it. They can't admit that vulnerability existed within them and that something happened that they couldn't protect themselves from. And then it's even harder to say, and now I've become the person who hurt me. And that is the most frightening thing, I think, for us all to become the version of ourselves that we promised we wouldn't become because we hated it when it happened to us. And this is the cycle of violence. We see this with every perpetrator, that something happened to them that they couldn't feel protected from. And because they resist the urge to admit, like, I was unprotected, I felt unsafe, they become the very thing that makes people feel unsafe. And I think it's just a human thing. It's a human thing, but we have the opportunity to change that. You talked about power dynamics. You have the power to change that as a leader, as an administrator, as a faculty member, as a mentor. You have the power to literally reconstruct people's experiences every day. And if you choose to, you can. If you don't, then you'll just do them more harm. And that's why I always say, tell all the stories, because these survival stories can also make people more aware of where they're complicit in harming other people, right? If you hadn't come to that person and told them, this is how you hurt me, and I'm leaving because you hurt me in this way, they would have never been held accountable. Even knowing that somebody is leaving because of I've hurt them puts it somewhere in the back of my mind, right? Even if I don't apologize, even if I don't try to fix it, there's no resolution, right, that I'm willing to come to this experience with, but it still stays in the back of my mind. I'm gonna remember you till my last day. Whether or not I admit that, I'm going to remember it. And I think we just have to keep reminding people, you need to remember how you hurt me. And it's not, I think we also criminalize victims. And in these scenarios, victims are simply people who are speaking. There are many victims in the room, but you are just seeing the victims who are speaking. But we're all victims of something. And when you bring to people's attention, like, you've experienced harm, you were harmed too during your experience, then they're able to say, we are all victims. And what do we do to heal and move forward? And that's where community becomes like incredibly powerful, because then we're all on board with the same intention. We're moving with the same goal, and that is to help each other flourish. And that's what should happen in all of these spaces.
I agree. I agree with you. I think what I left away with is definitely a sense of intention to not repeat that harm, right? I remember telling someone like, oh, from that experience, I am mindful to not reproduce that harm because I wouldn't want anyone to look back and say that I closed doors because I just had access to closing doors, right? Um, it's like we can't expect to practice freedom if we are actively engaging in being perpetrators. And I think another level to that, just from the spiritual level, is what happens when people practice like spiritual bypassing, right? Like, oh, I forgive you, or, I'm healed now because what you did was wrong, but without accepting their part in it is something that I also walked away with, right? To be mindful of others who can't self-reflect or who refuse to self-reflect about perhaps why they showed up in this space as this. Because as you said, that person also would have ingested some type of violence because that's how the system is set up, right? And the fact that you can say like lower ranking people in regards to the faculty scale, they have to participate in silence until tenure. And like, what violence does that inflict on their personhood? Because they want to secure their careers, right? And like, how does that again breed a space of violence versus a space of healing and something new? I don't think we can arrive at something new if we all can't speak from the positions that we stand in and not be demonized or not be bullied or not be demoted because of it.
Right, right. So it's almost like when violence is happening to you, you should turn to that person and say, who's hurting you right now? Right? Because if you have a leader who's trying to get tenure, right? And they're being told to shut up and take it. And now they're telling everyone else to shut up and take it. They're being hurt too. Like, come talk to me. Like, you should get help. You should really check on yourself, and not in like a you're failing kind of way. And I think sometimes we hear these things as criticisms that tell us we're failing or we can't. And that's not it. It's like, hey, have you considered? I invite you to consider that you're hurting other people, and it might be because someone's hurting you right now. And if we can name who that is, who would it be? It's something we do in therapy all the time. Like, if you could talk to one person who's making you feel uncomfortable in your life right now, who would that be? Who is it? And it's okay. This is a safe place to say it. To say, you're hurting me. This institution is hurting me. But then you're also charged with, what do you do when you know you're being hurt? And that's the real kicker. And that was me at 28, going like, what do you do when you know you're being hurt? You walk away, girl, and you don't go into no doctoral program for another 6 years. That was me. I was like, you do not become somebody's kicking doll or hitting doll. You walk away. You walk away. And to walk away meant, in some ways, you walk away with nothing because it was not the thing that you needed in order to sort of jumpstart your career. But I walked away with my sanity, like I walked away with a resemblance of peace that I could work with for a while until I could recover a full portion of peace. And I think we also encourage people. I remember the first job I was offered, and don't tell student loans, because they go like, "Girl, I thought you couldn't get no job." I'm like, hold up. But I turned it down because I had had a supervisor for years, and they were moving the department to another department. And I was like, oh, so I'm going to be under someone else. And so I interviewed with them. Well, not even interviewed. I had a conversation with them, and I was just like, something's not settling in my spirit. I feel like this relationship is going to be tense. I already knew the man who was interviewing me had a mean spirit towards other people in the building that we shared. And so I was like, do you want to put yourself in a direct line of receiving this every day, all day? And also your livelihood, your paycheck is linked to whether or not you get this person's approval. And I was like, nope. So I literally did the conversation, got the keys to my office, went back to my office. And by the end of the day, I was delivering the keys back to him. And I was saying, no, I'm not going to take this position. And it was almost like, what? Like, that was such a flip. And I was like, nah, I'm good. If I walk away, I know I'm walking away because I need to be well with my soul. Okay. Mm-hmm. I need the inner peace over everything. And it was like coming out of grad school, $45,000, which doesn't seem like a lot, for anybody these days. But shoot, in 2017, I think that was, you were like, well, it's a starting salary, I'm going to go up from there. But peace, choosing inner peace, choosing safety, choosing people who are actually invested in your professional outlook, right? And not just asking you to show up and perform. And being okay with walking away when somebody is asking you to perform. Okay. If I wanted to be a monkey in a show, I'd do that. But I don't want to be that. I want to be that. If I had my stripper body, I would do that. I would perform, but I don't want to do that. And it's like on some level, we always are performing, right? But it should be on our terms. It should be our choice, how we perform and when we perform and who we perform for. And if they're not respecting our performance, get up out of there. We say, go love who loves you. We tell you get up when they're not serving you love. We say all of these things that these thought leaders have said before us. You got to do it. At some point, we actually have to do it. It has to go from mind to actual body. And we have to do it.
That's good. Yeah, I think about what happens when you have to be in that space, right? Like you said, in regards to the paycheck. So what happens if you have to remain in that space because of the paycheck? Like, how do you navigate those relationships that aren't serving you, but it comes with a territory?
And it is not easy. Going to broke is no joke. Okay, it rhymes, but it's not a fun time. But I'm also an Aquarius, so it's like they're like, you didn't see the warning signs. I'm like, I saw the flags, but I thought it was the circus. It's gonna be fun. And that's me going through life. I was also like single, no kids at the time. So it was like, I'm doing it on my terms. So you do have to like weigh the consequences. Don't get me wrong. I understand everybody's not going to walk away from a job because some of us like to eat really well. Okay. And some of us like to get our hair done and our nails done. And we like buying what we like buying. And I'm rooting for y'all. But me, I'm not getting out the bed for something I don't want to do. And even if my bed is under a bridge, Lord knows I done slept in my car before because housing was not a part of my life anymore. And it's your choice. It's your choice. But I would hope when we say, I choose me, we really mean it, right? And we mean it at all cost. Choose you, because you will find people who value you. And in choosing you, you will find people who will protect you while you're choosing yourself, right? Like I have people who loved on me while I made really difficult decisions, and I will ride for them to my last day. you can always find a needle that's going to help thread you through whatever you got to go through. And I hope we can all, Maya Angelou, she always said, be a rainbow, for somebody else, be that symbol of hope. And I hope we can all get there, because these spaces are telling us that there are some people there who are hopeless, who are hurting. And maybe if we show up as a rainbow and tell them, hey, I'm going to be a rainbow here. Don't try to turn me into a sunshine ray. Don't try to change me. I'm a rainbow, and I'm going to give you hope, because our communities need us to be exactly who we are. Mm-hmm. They need us, not the manufactured version that comes after years of higher education. They need who you are.
Mm-hmm. That's good. I appreciate you saying that in regards to holding true to yourself, that people will protect you as you are choosing yourself. And I can definitely say that was my experience, right? I think in a lot of the episodes of the seasons, we often talk about how people hold space for us in our times of difficulty. So I'm thinking about like when people say, oh, like my parents cooked for me or my spouse cooked for me when I was going through this season in my life, right? We have the praying mothers, the grandmothers, right, who hold space. So I would say that is definitely something that I walked away with, was a sense of deep gratitude and depth to, having a praying mother, like we said, like is always a blessing when people can stand in the gaps for you, even the gaps that you don't even know are present when you are choosing yourself, right? So who do you have that decide to choose you, and I have to think about it? Because if I got to think about choosing you over and over again, then that's something there that needs to be addressed. So I would also say that I'm grateful for the protection, because I remember telling my sister friend that, who's, in regards to social work, when talking about the bullying experience, I said, honestly, I recognize that this needs to be addressed, and I'm okay with the consequences of it, because I know that my loved ones will protect me. That even if it comes down to legal ramifications because of the unethical and broken contracts, that if we gotta tough this out, then we're gonna tough it out, and I'm gonna be okay. Because at the end of the day, what's behind my name has to be true. I don't want anyone to look back in any position that I've served in regards to being a leader to say, oh, she didn't go. She didn't do it right, right? And I also told them that I don't want anyone to leave with the same trauma that I experienced. So if I have to be the villain in the storybook, so that way you feel okay about yourself, then let me be the villain and I'll protect those who are coming up after me. That I'm okay with that.
Come on, Dylan. Come on. Let's go. Let's go.
Yeah.
You remind me of when I finished my MDiv, there's like this paper. It's not a thesis because it's not that kind of research paper kind of thing. But in the paper, I was like covering all these bases. Like I was talking about all these marginalized groups and communities. Mm-hmm. And the first reader on my reading committee, she was like, and I love her still to this day, because she said, well, why are you writing about all these things? Like, why are you including all these voices? Why is it necessary? And I said, oh, everybody's necessary. Everybody's valuable to any conversation. It's just a matter of like, if we give them an option to speak. And she's like, but I still don't get why you would. And I said, because I don't mind being a target. I don't mind being a target. I'm going to stand right here. You look, and we talk about 10 toes down. Are you real? Are you real? Can you be the villain? Because in some cases, you're going to need to be the villain, because the villain is just an indicator of opposition, right? The villain indicates that something is opposing something that everybody else is like in agreement with. And often we think all the villains are bad, but sometimes the villains are simply the people who are saying the opposite of what's already being said, and it's necessary and valuable. So I'm rooting. Come on, villain era. Are we for your soft girl era? It's villain era. I think I posted something yesterday about that. I came across something that was like, I'm done being compliant and I'm just gonna be difficult. I love it. Let's be difficult.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, this hold my hand so you know I love you. These people are gonna die. And we're the ones left to carry it. How are we gonna carry it? Are we gonna carry it the same way they did? Or are we gonna carry it a different way? We gotta shake it up. We gotta tip a table. Create something new. We talk about that all the time. Like, we want a life that's abundant. How? How do we get there? We want communities that are healed. How do we get there? We have to do something different. And so if speaking about it helps us get there, if creating new organizations helps us get there, if just telling people it was wrong and it shouldn't have happened to you, you were bullied. You were bullied. And it's not okay. And it's okay to tell that person it's not okay.
Yeah.
Every kid on the playground wishes that happened.
Mm.
And we're all just children inside needing to be protected. And sometimes we demand that we protect ourselves, and we can still have other people protect us too. We talk about showing up. That's a great way to show you're valuable. You're a part of my community and you mean something to me. And we're going to drag that person, like we're going to post names first and last. Okay. Like, and sometimes the exposure is necessary. I'm not going to say who, but I was talking to somebody recently about being sexually assaulted. And it was years ago in their undergraduate experience. And it was by a religious leader. And this person's much older now, like maybe 25 years has transpired between that event and present day. And the person still wasn't saying the person's name. And I said, I like moved a little closer. I said, it's okay to say the name and make it real. Even as you talk about it 25 years later, it's okay to make it so that it was real, so that you can acknowledge it really happening. The person couldn't remember the person's name. Because for so long, like in an attempt to protect self, you sort of buried the facts, you buried the truth so that you could feel safe. And it also almost like removes it from being your experience to like something that happens. We can talk about Israel, we can talk about what's happening in Palestine, but it's still like this abstract idea that we can't witness. But when you physically witness violence, when you physically witness harm being done to yourself and you can't acknowledge it, it sort of just fades and fades and fades. And so in an attempt to sort of reclaim all of the growth that person had gone through, I said, you give them a name, okay? You give them a name and you say, this person did not hurt me, okay? This person harmed my body. This person harmed me for a moment, but I will not live hurt for the rest of my life because of what this person did. The choices that this person made, they will not affect me for the rest of my life. And then healing can begin. And the same happens when we talk about some of these other experiences, whether it's workplace trauma, whether it's relational trauma, familial trauma. Like, we have so many different areas. I'm a blank on his name right now because the coffee is not kicked in, but he says the trauma isn't what happened. So the trauma isn't the violence that happened. It's whatever preceded the violence happening that made you not feel like you could go to somebody and find safety, right? This lady was talking about a similar experience of being sexually assaulted. And when it happened, she told no one. And the psychologist said that wasn't the violence. The violence was that you didn't tell your mom. You didn't tell your dad. Like, you didn't feel safe in these relationships to share. That's the trauma. That's the real trauma, is that the relationships were so broken that when the violence occurred, like, you didn't feel safe enough to tell it. And I'm like, wow. that shifts everything, right? If violence is happening at these institutions, the real violence is that we never trusted these institutions in the first place. If the violence is happening with these faculty and these administrators and even support staff these days, a Black woman was gunned down by a man who used to work at the facilities. You feel like these aren't safe places. That's the trauma, that these were never designed to be safe places. What transpires as a result of the insecurity is human evolution, right? That's violence because we're in a state where it's normalized. But the real trauma is that we haven't constructed spaces to nurture minds safely.
That's a lot. Yeah. Yeah, because if you're in spaces, if you have to earn a living in spaces where you are unsafe, what is that doing to your psychology, right? To your body, all of the above. That's a scary place to be in. Yeah, and what happens when you are, like you said, intentionally in your villain era, open to being a target in a space that's already marked as unsafe? Yeah, I don't know.
I think about this season and all of these women who you've had talk about their transitions and their journeys, and you think about a lot of them being mothers for the first time, right? And actually carrying, having pregnancies, right? Where the baby was in a safe place. Okay, let's be very clear about how pregnancy is trauma to the body. Babies feel very safe in womb. In the womb, they're safe. When they come out, we have to prove to them that out here is safe in an environment that is not safe, right? You think about that. The mother's job, the parent's job is to prove to the baby that it's safer out here. You can come out because it's safer out here, knowing that there are so many things that are outside of our control. I remember my first sister, the first kid in our family, my sister had when I was 19. And I was going back and forth from college, and I was like, sudden baby death syndrome, sudden infant death syndrome was like at the top of my mind every time I was like holding my niece, burping my niece, putting her down for a nap. And I was like, is she just gonna die? Like, and it gave me anxiety to the point that like when I laid her down for naps, I would be checking her body every time, every time. If she was quiet, I was watching her because I was like, there's no clear, pathway for how this happens, and nobody knows like how to avoid it happening. And so as a 19-year-old, you're like, keep the baby alive at all costs. And I'm literally like poking the baby. if she was asleep too long, I was just like,
oh no.
On Instagram, you see reels of people like lifting the baby's arm to make sure it drops, or like if it goes. And I remember what that fear was because you're trying to protect something you really can't protect. You can't protect. If there was an earthquake right now, I can't keep the walls up in the house. I can't protect you from everything. But my job is to let you know I'm present, right? I'm not absent. I didn't abandon you. I'm present with you. And even if we come to our demise together, I'm still present with you. And that's the job of the institution, to say, hey, the whole world is dangerous, but it's safe here because I'm with you. Not because I can protect you from everything, but because we are here with you, walking alongside you, educating you, helping you get through this very difficult stage of development. We're here and we won't abandon you.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, I mean, just in life, right? Like you can't guarantee always protection. Yeah, but I'm present, but I will go through this process with you. And I think when we think back to season 3, just the commitment to growth and that being love. Like I commit to going through life with you, and this is how I manifest my love for you. And no matter the season, I'm here.
Ooh, I just love it because you think about people are so fixated on partnership. But partnership should be overflowing in your life. That should be one thing there's never a deficit of. Partnership, relationship, right? Where people are saying, like, I support you, I'm showing up for you. I always tell people the best thing you can say for me is, I got you. Like, I'm pulling up, because that is how I operate. If you need something and you let me know, I'm selling something to get it to you. Like, I am walking darn near to the Holy Land to make sure I can get you, what you need or whatever I can do to help. And I think if more people could commit to just showing up for one person that way, the world would be a better place. The world would be a better place because all we need to know is that there is somebody who's there and somebody who cares. And if it's just one person, it's enough to change an entire trajectory of somebody's life.
I agree. I totally agree with that because when going through transitions, if it is a transition that you thought would have went well, went differently, right? Experience disappointment, but also what does it mean to hold disappointment and joy in the same space because you held on to those relationships. So I would say whatever, if you consider doing a postdoc, if you're in a postdoc and you're navigating being a new faculty member, how are you practicing reciprocity so that way once you are going through your transitions, it's not a question of who will show up with for you because you've
Mm-hmm.
already proven yourself to be a partner in whatever that relationship is.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So I'm grateful that, which I also said in the blog post, is that my postdoc has reaffirmed that people prove God by loving you. Like if you ask me who God is, I'll tell you, oh, I see God in this relationship because they
Mm-hmm.
have showed up sometimes without even asking, right? People who
Mm-hmm.
can see into you before you even recognize yourself. And
Mm-hmm.
this is how we are doing that relationship, that community healing, that community sustaining restoration, because we are holding each other up in spaces and moments when we don't think we can even hold ourselves, right? So I would
Yeah.
say offer yourself the opportunity to break down. That is just all
Mm-hmm.
right. That is
Mm-hmm.
it's a part often of these processes of being whole, right? So I would also offer that to anyone who is going through a transition where they may have thought that it should have went one way, that it may have said that on paper, but in actuality it's going this way.
Mm-hmm.
Because I would say that I was able to experience love in ways that I have not before, in ways that I didn't expect, in ways that I didn't pray for. But
Mm-hmm.
because that person was proving God, that I was there, right? So I said, be okay with people helping you to carry you through. I think oftentimes as Black women, we may seem as though we always got to be the whole, the strong, the all these roles, to check all these boxes. But what does it mean to be soft
Mm-hmm.
and let other people carry that for you,
Mm-hmm.
right? I will also offer that when thinking
Mm-hmm.
about transitions.
Yes. Come on. That's a Sunday sermon right there. That blessed my soul because it's just that simple. Like love should be just that simple. And God said, let us create man in our image, in our image. So love was the image. Love was the whole
Mhm.
act of creating. It was out of love. And so if we've gotten that right, we can go because that's it. We can close the book because that is the conclusion. If we can just manage to love each other well, that's all. That's all that we have to do here. We don't have to make billions of dollars. It's nice. Don't get me wrong. It's nice to get a little change without doing something strange. I'm gonna regret that I said that. It's the coffee kicking in now.
Oh,
It's
goodness.
nice, but love is the mission. Love is the mission, and everything else is a part of the abundance. And so it's great when
Mhm.
somebody can walk away from any moment, and I won't say a collective as in an experience, but any moment where you can move from moment to moment and say, wow, in that last moment, I was loved well. You know,
Mm-hmm.
this morning, somebody smiled at me and I was loved well. You know, that's a beautiful thing. That makes human life worth living. And that's a good reminder for me, even in this moment where things are challenging, you're still transitioning, but am I loving somebody well?
Mm-hmm.
Can we do that? I went to see the Pixar, I think, let me not, the little movie with the little boy, Elio, I think it's Elio. It just came out. Okay, it's like a little kid movie.
Okay.
It had me cry 3 times. I cried 3 times because the little boy is he's a Latino boy. His parents died. His aunt has taken him in and he feels like he doesn't belong. I said, "What?"
They love killing off somebody's parents.
I thought this was about STEM. I thought he was just like some little wizard with a
Mm.
colander on his head, and he was gonna do something crazy. I did not know it had a backstory, and I should have looked into that because I'm sitting there like, oh my god, what? The baby want to get to outer space so he can be with the aliens because that's where he feels like he will finally belong.
Mm-hmm.
And so he's going through this whole little journey, and I'm not gonna spill the movie, but we're looking for somebody to simply say, like, I love you, I like you, I think you're all right.
Mm-hmm.
And even if there are things about you, that you want to change or somebody feels like you should change, relationships shouldn't be threatened by those things. We should still be somebody worthy of being in relationship with, regardless of our flaws, regardless of our weaknesses. And I hope and pray that everybody can find one person to say, you are worth it.
Mm-hmm.
Period.
Period.
No disclaimers. Look, no footnotes. Just, you're worth it
Yeah.
because you are. You're worth going for an education and not being hurt while you do it. You're worth it.
Mm-hmm.
You're worth not hurting. You're worth it. You're worth me taking the best care I can possibly take when I'm in your presence and when we're in relationship with each other. You're worth it. You're worth me being mindful of what you need. And when your feelings are hurt, you're worth it. And if we can't do that, go get in a corner and talk to Jesus. Because I return to my initial request.
Oh, that's good. I appreciate all this insight. I'll definitely have to listen back and take
Yeah, you
notes.
you nailed it. I mean it. That Sunday sermon, between that and injustice violence, girl, I'm whipped over here. I'm like, I'm gonna have to go get
Yeah.
some more tea or something, chamomile tea, something to just rest my soul. Because that it's so true. It's so true. And it's normalized in so many ways that even I sit here and I'm regretting things because it is. It's just a result of our experiences and how we categorize them in our brains. And our
Mm-hmm.
brain is so flawed, as beautiful as it is, because it has a habit of repeating things, even when it knows this isn't good for me.
Yeah, that is true.
Mhm.
Whew. It's okay.
It will be. It will be. It sure will.
We're
I
all
told
in
my kids, put your
process.
hand on your heart. Tell your heart, you're okay, heart. I did
Yes,
it
you're
with
okay.
adults the other day, and they were like, I said, yes, y'all better start speaking to your heart. You're okay, heart. And the moment
Mhm.
you put your hand on your heart, the energy from your hand goes directly through your chest and you feel different, right? And sometimes
Mhm.
it's just the human contact. And we can gift ourselves that every day at any moment. Um, and tell yourself it's gonna be okay. It's not okay right now. Some things are not okay right now. That is fair, but it will be okay because
Mhm.
you have the ability to make it so. And if
Yeah.
you rely on the people around you, they can help you make it so. I love that you said your physician was giving you referrals for other places to go. Like, that's care. That's the utmost care. If you
Mhm.
can find people to do that for you, to help you think ahead, That's love. That is love and care in one of the best forms.
Ashe. Okay, thank you. This was awesome.
It was. You had an awesome season. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you for
4
being a part of
seasons.
it. Couldn't do it without you.
Girl, we're walking this journey alongside each other, okay? We're here, present with each other in love.
Yes. I'm so grateful. I'm grateful for every guest that came on to share their journeys from motherhood, but praying for motherhood, even thinking about the legacy of how do we transition and what that looks like, right? Think about through the lifespan, how do we protect our bodies and be mindful of our bodies through the lifespan, not just as we are trying to become pregnant, but what does it mean to always practice wellness? And also to think about career transitions. How do we show up and not it being our only identity? I think that's also a reminder that I would say, like, who are you outside of your job title? I think a lot of our guests reminded us of that. Like, I am choosing to be a present mother because that's what I need and I desire. So who are you is also a question that I would offer those who are in seasons of transitions.
Yeah. And that's a weighty one. So look, you don't have to digest it all in one bite. Take small bites at it. Like, it might be moment to moment, who am I? Day to day, who am I? And sort of figuring out which ones resonate as being a priority over the other ones. Yeah.
That's
real.
true.
Yeah.
I totally agree with that.
Well, in some transitions, you become a horrible friend. Let me tell you. In other transitions, maybe you're a not so nice daughter. In other transitions, maybe you're a mommy who needs away time every weekend, to sort of reset. It's okay. It's okay to take off and put on different hats. It's okay.
Oh, that's good. And offer yourself grace in it. Yeah.
Look, as you always remind me, I love it when you go, what would be easeful? And I'm only person in my life offering me ease, man. That's beautiful.
Listen, if I could always choose ease, so at those moments, I'm like, yes, what is easeful for us? Let's choose that.
Beautiful
There's so many other things that are outside of our control, as you uplifted throughout this conversation, right? So I totally agree with that. So thank you. Thank you again, Sierra, for being our conversation partner for this.
I can't wait for season 5. I'm excited. I know it's cooking. We're going to let her cook.
You're going to let her cook. Yep. Cook real good. All the seasonings, okay? So wherever you are, if you are watching the podcast on YouTube, be sure to subscribe if you haven't subscribed. Share it with your sister circle. Share it with your partners, however you're in partnership, whether or not that's collegial, business, romantic partnership, because these are definitely conversations that I know help us to navigate life more easily, as Sierra has uplifted. If you are listening to it on the streaming platform, whether or not that's Spotify, Apple, again, be sure to subscribe. I'm super excited for LiraeJourney.com. So if you have not yet checked out the new landing page, of course, expertly designed by Sierra, be sure to check it out. You will see all of the updates, the podcast, the book club, any new happenings in the community. So be sure to check it out. Sign up for the newsletter so that way you are always updated with what's happening. So be sure to follow me at Lirae Journey wherever you are, whether or not that's Spotify, Instagram, TikTok. I'm in all of the spaces. And as always, love is real and eternal. In community, peace.
Peace, y'all.
Hey, Lirae Journey community supporter. You can follow the community by following the handle at Lirae Journey on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. Also, be sure to leave comments on Spotify, YouTube, and follow wherever you're listening or watching the podcast. For those who are part of the book club or love to discuss books, and movies, you can follow me at Sherella Cupid on the Fable app. Lastly, you can go to podcast.mckissickhealth.com to sign up for the newsletter. There, you'll receive updates such as new episode drops, events, and so much more. Again, go to podcast.mckissickhealth.com. And as always, love is real and eternal. In community, peace.